familiar. So if you don't know by now, then you should probably get familiar.
Hey guys, Jinzo and Tonic here, and welcome back not to my channel, but once again, welcome back to GoFormat.com. I will be doing, like I said in the last video, a lot of their interviews and getting deck profiles from their tournaments and having them shown on their channel. So I just wanted to say a massive big congratulations to Jase from Australia. Came first with Goat Control. Haven't seen a Goat Control deck top a major event in a very long time, so congrats. Hopefully this changes and defines the meta a bit more. Very cool. So let's get into the video. And guys, if you want to see out more content, please subscribe to GoFormat.com. Also check out my channel, Jinzo and Tonic. And yeah, cool, let's get into it.
Hi everyone, my name is Jase Hutchison. Last weekend I competed in the 3rd Patron World Championship Qualifier and went undefeated with Goat Control. In the past, I played Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Between 2012 and 2016, where the biggest impact I had on the game was creating the blue-blooded Oni FTK that topped the 2015 Australian Nationals. Presently, I only play Goat format. To prepare for the tournament, I played Goat Control on Dueling Book Ladder. Command Magician was a new addition to my deck, so I wanted to record as much data as possible. I was doing well with my Goat Control deck for a few weeks before GoatFormat.com published its 2021 tier list 2 days before the tournament. I took it as a personal challenge to do as well as I could after Dale and Scully dropped Goat Control from A tier to B tier. I did not know it at the time, but I would be the only Goat Control player in the tournament. I know Kales Turbo and Chaos Warrior are the biggest rivals to Goat Control and built my main deck accordingly. I chose to play Gravekeeper Spy because I believe it to be one of the strongest cards in the meta. Kales Turbo does not have many answers outside of an early boss monster, and it walls Blade Knight, one of Chaos Warrior's best monsters. Traditional Goat Control has even less answers to Spy than the above decks, and for this reason I also chose to run Command Magician to attack over both Spy and Chaos Sorcerer. Without Command Magician, Goat Control must use good cards to clear Spy and Chaos Sorcerer, leaving you with less answers for later threats. You see Chaos Warrior playing Ninja Grandmaster Sasuke for the same reason. I was confident in my main deck ability to go toe-to-toe with the 2 most popular decks, so built my side deck to beat other strong decks that would have lower representation. The decks I wanted to side for included Chaos Control, Empty Jar, Library FTK, Reasoning Gate, Rescue Cat OTK, and Burn. In the tournament, I played against Chaos Return round 1, Stein Monarch round 2, Chaos Warrior round 3, Stein Gate round 4, and Chaos Warrior round 5. In the Grand Finals, I played against Kales Turbo. I have nothing but respect for all my opponents, they were all great players, and I had a blast playing against them. After the winners final, I spectated the Twitch stream. Watching SlashTap dominate the losers bracket was intimidating, but I secretly hoped to face him in the Grand Final. It seemed fitting that the final boss of the tournament would be Kales Turbo. So, looking at some of the card choices themselves. I have been asked by a lot of people why I run Command Magician over Zaborg, which can also answer Spy and Chaos Sorcerer. Command Magician being immune to monster removal, such as Chaos Sorcerer, Night Assailant, Exiled Force, Tsukuyomi, and Restrict, is more relevant than people think. Not being banished by your opponent's Chaos Sorcerer makes it easier to summon your Blackluster Soldier. Zaborg is also dead whenever your opponent has no monsters on board, as its effect is mandatory. This is terrible in a Goat Control deck relying on tribute monsters to turn off a Restrict or 0 attack. Something else to consider is that level 6 fusions are stronger than level 5 fusions against Chaos Warrior and Chaos Turbo. Ryu Senshi with Blackluster Soldier is almost as strong as Heavy Storm with Blackluster Soldier against multiple back rows. Also, The high defense of Command Magician lets you use Book of Moon to protect it from battle traps. And funnily enough, 1900 defense was clutch in the tournament when my opponent had Smashing Ground while I had both Command Magician and Spy on board. After the event, I listened to the Twitch stream, and one of the commentators said old school Go Control players would be rolling in their graves because I was playing Spy with Scapegoat. In the past, people have shied away from Spy with Scapegoat, but I believe this is a mistake. Scapegoat is best in the mid to late game, when the game state is simplified, where your opponent may only have one attacker. In this situation, Scapegoat gets a lot of value by buying you multiple turns. In the early game, I will absorb attacks and only use Scapegoat to keep out of ring range. This should give you plenty of opportunity to play Spy. Spy can be played both defensively and offensively, depending on the situation. It is a good fit for Go Control, which once prided itself on having the flexibility to thrive in any matchup. Further, even if its effect is dead, it is still a 2000 defense wall, which is valuable in a lot of circumstances. Looking at Magician of Faith and Kaiku, I only run 2 Magician of Faith because it is my weakest card against Chaos Warrior, and I've seen many people trying to take advantage of free Magician of Faith with Mind Control, sometimes even in Game 1. For a similar reason, I only run 1 Kaiku. It is a good card, but many opponents are trying to take advantage of multiple Kaiku by running Skill Dart Magician or Berserk Gorilla to get a plus in battle. Tomato is another flexible card that can be played both defensively and offensively. However, its main purpose is to search Sengan, to tribute summon Command Magician or enable Call of the Haunted if it dies. Sengan is a tribute that replaces itself, thins the deck, and searches Sinister or Tsukuyomi, which is great for any Go Control deck. Tomato can also search Spy to wall Blade Knight or Kaiku in a pinch. I am a big fan of the free Spy, 2 Tomato, and 1 Sengan ratio for these reasons. However, there is more to the story. My opponents know that I benefit from Tomato being removed in battle, so they are more inclined to remove it using spell or trap cards. If my opponent is not careful, they may run out of spell or trap cards for Command Magician. So the rest of the monsters here and the spells are pretty standard. I guess 2 Metamorphosis stands out, but the reasoning behind that is I didn't want to brick by opening 2 metas in hand too often, and I didn't want to run cards that just don't seem to do well in the current meta, such as Magical Merchant or Dark Mimic level 1. The Jar of Greed though, so deck thinning is important in my Go Control because I only run 2 Metamorphosis. To provide deck thinning, I did choose Jar of Greed instead of Upstart Goblin. Go Control gives you time to set up Jar of Greed since you have Spy, Scapegoat, and Restrict to stall. Even if your opponent does not waste removal cards on it, playing around Jar of Greed while thinking about battle traps and sometimes Solemn Judgment takes up valuable mental resources, and they may make suboptimal plays just to avoid the suboptimal play of using a removal card on Jar of Greed. The next thing I can talk about is how I sided for the tournament. Against Kales Turbo, if I saw they were running Night Assailant, I would consider taking out Duo, a Dust Tornado, and a Sakuratsuama, and bringing in the Solemn Judgments. If they weren't running Night Assailant, then I would consider leaving the main deck alone, sometimes adding another Dust Tornado and sometimes even switching out some jars for solemns anyway. I do like switching out jars for solemn if they saw jar game 1, and then sometimes switching back if they see solemn in game 2. It's just part of the mind games. Against Chaos Warrior, I take out 1 Magician of Faith and 2 Cross Out, putting in a Berserk Gorilla, 1 Dust Tornado, and 1 Sakuratsuama. I don't like taking out both Magician because it is a searchable light with Sangan and a level 1 for meta, so it's not completely bad in that matchup. And here I don't feel the need to overside for the matchup either, because my monster lineup is already very strong. It was one of the reasons why I chose to run Kaiku in the main, because it's good against Kales Turbo, and against Chaos Warrior, it's an 1800 beater, which is it's better than Magician of Faith in that matchup. So I can still leave it in and just bring in a Berserk Gorilla alongside it. Against Chaos Control, I would actually swap the Kaiku for the Asura Priest, and then bring in the second Book of Moon for Dust Tornado. The reason for that is that Asura Priest can kill all the scapegoat tokens, and it can't be hit by their own Chaos Sorcerers or Restrict, where Kaiku in this matchup, it can be outed by Tsukuyomi, it gets walled by Scapegoat, and Restrict, it's a juicy target for Restrict. So I do like to take it out. The second Book of Moon over Dust Tornado is because that game matchup, they aren't running too much back row. I've seen Chaos Control decks with only 5 traps. And Book of Moon is good against traps anyway, since I can use it on a lot of my monsters to protect them from battle traps, and I can also use it to stop their Restrict getting a plus. Something to note is that Command Magician has similar advantage to Kaiku and Asura, as it can't be targeted by Chaos monsters or Restrict. Without Command Magician, I would probably consider having a second copy of Kaiku and a second copy of Asura Priest, just to make those matchups a bit easier. The other card in my side deck stands out, I guess, is Death's Wombat. It gets sided in to stop burn, and also Library FTK, since unless they remove the Wombat, they can't get that final burn in after the reversal quiz. It's also a really high beater at only level 3, so there's a lot of matchups where you can just bring it in as a beater to attack under level limit, Area B, and Gravity Bind. Those matchups also happen to be burn and Library FTK, so it does more than what people give credit for. The Karibos are for any OTK deck, so Reasoning Gate and Rescue Cat OTK are the 2 that came to mind. It's searchable by Sangan. You can use it even if they have Jinzo on the board, and if you have a Metamorphosis in hand, you can summon Restrict or you can search it with Tomato. I do find it's just very difficult for those decks to play around it, where they can play around something like a Threatening Roll, especially Rescue Cat, where they don't have to go off if you flip roll. But if they go off and you drop a Karibo, they've just used everything to try and kill you and failed, and all their monsters just die in the end phase. Against something like Aggro Burn, I consider Scapegoat a bit of a liability as well, because Just Desserts and a Jama Trio are really going to conflict with it, and they're trying to get a lot of damage in by piercing over tokens anyway, So that's another matchup that I would bring in Karibo, and I would actually swap it for Scapegoat. I would take Scapegoat out entirely and bring in 2 Karibos as my level 1s for Metamorphosis. So it's a really flexible side deck card, and I would keep it moving forward. The Nekno Main Kings is the only card that might save me from Empty Jar and Library FTK if I'm going second. It does have limited utility outside of those matchups, so it is a card where if you don't think you're going to run to those decks, you could swap it for something else, but it would be awful just to give those decks free wins. I've already talked about the Book of Moon. I would say the third Dust Tornado is going to be for burn and stall decks, or maybe something that was running a skill drain. So I would always keep 3 Dust Tornadoes in my main or side. So talked about Sakuratsuama and Solemn Judgment. So this card I would consider to be an optional side for Kales Turbo and Chaos Warrior. It's fantastic if my opponent sees Jara Greed game 1, because game 1 my Jara Greeds are going to look like Solemn Judgments, and game 2 my Solemn Judgments are going to look like Jara Greed. It's just a lot for opponents to deal with, trying to play around both cards. It's also a mandatory side for any decks running Cold Wave, Giant Grenade, and all the FTK matchups like Empty Jar, Library FTK. But if it's an FTK matchup, you do have to have a chance to set it before it can do anything. So for the current meta, I would keep the main deck the same. In the side, the least flexible card is Nekno Main King, so if you weren't expecting to face those matchups, you could swap it for something else like Trapdoor Shoot. Personally, I have had little success with Trapdoor Shoot, but a lot of people like it. So I want to end with some tips. And one thing I would say is try to avoid oversiding. The main deck can handle Kales Turbo and Chaos Warrior, and oversiding is going to leave you vulnerable to your opponent's side deck strategies. For example, a lot of people might take out Sakuratsuama against Kales Turbo, but Kales Turbo is probably going to bring in Asura Priest, and you don't want to just rely on these single cards to deal with that. I would also urge people to respect that there are many strong decks in GOAT format and decide accordingly. If you are giving free wins to every deck that isn't Kales Turbo or Chaos Warrior, you're gonna struggle to do well. The last thing I want to say is that variance is part of the game, and even if it sometimes works against you, it is important to keep a positive mindset. I know people that give up as soon as their opponent gets a first turn plus off Duro. If that is something you struggle with, watch my grand finale replay, where this happened 3 times in 2 games, but I was still able to win those games as well. Thank you for watching, and thank you Jinzo and Tonic for the opportunity to show everyone that GOAT Control is still here, as strong as ever.